If you really want to understand why warehouses are bursting into flames and why CEOs of major tech companies are getting harassed and attacked, you need to understand the corporate shell game that every big tech and Fortune 500 company plays. And the corporate shell game works like this. Those organizations, and I know that all of us have heard this before, are constantly crying about how they can't find enough good talent. What they really mean when they say that is that we can't find the talent that's willing to do the job that we need them to do at the pay rate that we're willing to pay. That's what that means. Most of these organizations are looking for any way possible to cut costs, and the biggest cost center for any organization is labor. And because they have to keep labor costs under control, they do all sorts of things to manipulate compensation so that their balance sheets look the right way. And the perfect example of how this works can be observed through all of the massive layoffs that most of these tech companies have done over the last several years, and especially in the last year and a half or so. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people getting laid off, and the story is that they're getting laid off so that the companies can invest into AI. But is that really what's going on? Are all of those people getting wiped out because those companies are running headfirst into AI? It's partly true, but here's what's happening behind the scenes. What's happening behind the scenes is that, yes, these companies are investing into AI and they're shifting funds and resources into that space. But what they're doing, in addition to that, is hiring back a lot of those fired employees and bringing them back as contractors. When you bring them back as contractors, you don't have to pay benefits, you don't have to pay retirement, and you can usually pay a lower hourly rate because those people need work. So you don't lose any of the institutional knowledge, and you get to keep that in-house by bringing those employees back as contractors. They never show up on your balance sheet as far as a full-time employee. And this is a trend and a habit that many organizations have used. And if you think about the tech sector has been sued on multiple occasions by using employment tactics like this, by leveraging H-1B employees, by leveraging contractor labor force, and treating them as employees to skirt the requirements that full-time employees get. This has been part of the behavior of big tech and big corporations, and it explains the simmering anger that a lot of employees and a lot of rank and file people and frontline people have about working for these companies. When you have companies like Meta, Oracle, Amazon laying people off by the tens of thousands, and then bringing them back as contractors and paying them less and not paying them benefits, you can understand why a level of anger exists within the population, and you can understand why people would be willing to lash out. You don't have to do anything other than look at your average LinkedIn feed and look at how many open for work and struggling to find work posts there are from eminently qualified people. And that's the landscape that these companies have created. Keep in mind that these companies are led by billionaire and millionaire CEOs who, on the one hand, will talk about how we're all family and we all need to pull together and sacrifice and hustle so that we can get to this next milestone. And on the other hand, without even thinking about it, will lay off tens of thousands of people to make the shareholders happy, and at the same time, they will hire more executives and give them pay bumps and compensation packages that range in the tens of millions of dollars. There's a fundamental sickness in how all of these organizations are operating. They look at the rest of us as cogs in the wheel and disposable, and they treat us like that. And then they act shocked when the working class strikes back at the injustice that's been leveled at them. The fact of the matter is, what we're seeing today in terms of factories burning down, in terms of attacks on billionaire executives, in terms of attacks on the elite, this is built into the DNA of the American experience. We can trace this all the way back to the Revolution. What do you think the Boston Tea Party was? It was the working class mobilized by the elites of their time to strike back against another group of elites. That's what that was. Let's keep in mind that what we're seeing today occurs in an environment where the wealth inequality is greater than it was during the French Revolution. So the fact that these things are happening, it's still considered a relatively moderate response. Because if you think back to the French Revolution, what was happening to the aristocracy when the people stormed the Bastille? Understanding that lets you know why a lot of these billionaires and millionaires are investing deeply into their own bunkers, because they know what they're doing has consequences.